There's a big change that we're going through on the planet right now. There's no doubt that the change is going to happen. The question is, are we going to navigate that in a graceful way or in a very painful way? Because most of us are thinking a lot smaller than we can live. People always say, I want to create the life of my dreams. And I just think, well, that sounds really limited. I want to create the life beyond my dreams. I want to live a life bigger and more amazing than I can even imagine right now. The biggest thing I can imagine now is not my full potential. Intuition is what gets you there. Your intuition is really coming from love, and it'll blow you away. If you're really tuning in and listening, you'll get things that seem kind of ridiculous. Moving up to higher levels of consciousness or higher awareness, you're going to be able to create the life better than you can imagine, rather than just creating the life that you think you want.
Aside from my soul.
Welcome back to the Inspired Evolution, and it literally is back to back. We started the conversation, and silly old Amrit, forgot to press record. Jeffrey, thank you so much for being here with us, and my sincerest apologies for losing a quarter of an hour of an episode.
Oh, no worries. That's perfect. That just means that there's better stuff coming ahead.
For those that are tuning into Jeffrey Allen, give me 2 seconds. Let me do the honors. He's a popular Mindvalley author, and I'm certain you've seen one of his videos on YouTube, online. He's famous for his work with Mindvalley, but he's also a speaker, a powerful energy healer, and a pioneer in online energy training. We share a kinship. He's an engineer by trade, and in his heart of hearts, he's an energy healer. He's helped countless of people combine their intellect with their intuition. He helps people boost their confidence, improve their relationships, find meaning and purpose, and ultimately helps them manifest the life of their dreams. Jeffrey, I heard this before, but I've got to ask you again. You've made it your life's work to help energy work, and deeper than that, higher awareness of consciousness spread further and making it more accessible to so many people. Helping other people unburden themselves ultimately from pain and conflict. I'd love to just capture again what inspired you to embark on this particular mission, and how it's transformed your own life.
Yeah, you bet. That's great. So, and I'll probably give a completely new answer.
Awesome.
So,
just for my benefit.
Yeah. So a few things inspired me. So one was, I was in this place in life where I sort of had these two parts of me, or kind of two lives I was living. So on one hand, I was a software engineer, and I was, invested in being respected by my peers and making money and advancing my career and buying cool stuff and, like all that stuff that we love to do. And then on the other hand, I was a student of energy work and intuition, and I was studying at different schools about learning about how to do that and how to make it more real. And, I had these kind of two lives. And at some point I wanted to put those together, because really there's just one of me. There's not really an engineer Jeffrey and a spiritual Jeffrey. There's just this kind of spiritual engineer Jeffrey, and I wanted that to come out all the time. And then the second part, which you mentioned too, is I started noticing as I was doing intuitive readings for people. I used to do at least 3, sometimes 5 a week. I was kind of a junkie. This is my evenings, right? I'd just be doing intuitive readings for people and healing work. And I started noticing that, wow, we're all in a lot of unnecessary pain. We're like the things that hold us back. And I say we because to me, we're all so similar, even though we're unique too, but we're so similar in the way that we're trying to avoid getting hurt again. And we're trying to get somewhere that we think we should go. And it's those things that are happening in the mind, they're kind of in the way of us just being free. And that's the thing that I wanted so much that I didn't have in corporate America. Was I had financial freedom, but I didn't have freedom everywhere else. I felt like I needed to at least somewhat modulate what I was talking about, although I wasn't great at it. Talk about what I'm excited about. But I also wanted to just be totally free to say, hey, I'm an energy healer. I'm intuitive. I like to try channeling, just all the stuff that I was worried and afraid that people would judge me for. I just wanted to say it out loud and just put it out there to the world. So that's the things that motivated me to change, was that desire to be free, that desire to take the different parts of myself and unite them as one.
Can you share a pivotal moment from your journey that shifted your focus from the analytical software engineering, computer science part of you into the energy healing and intuitive? Like you said, there's two parallel streams, but there must have been a moment when you mentioned previously, like intuitive healing, and even just, as you're talking, it's very hard for me not to come to the realization that energy work sounds a lot like spiritual engineering. It's energy work. And was there a pivotal moment where you had to employ the tools of your own spiritual engineering, your intuitive healing, to overcome the blocks that were in your way to step into your idealized dream sort of intuitive reality as a healer?
Sure. Yeah, I would say there were a couple of ones, but for me, because my hobby is sort of my by night I was the energy healer, by day I was a software engineer. So my night work was all about self healing. So looking within, finding the places where I was afraid, where I had pain, and working on changing those energetically. But it's so I was kind of lucky in that sense. Like I was doing a lot of inner work on the side, which is in some ways easier than doing it in real life when you like, when it's hitting the fan and you need to heal, you need to release some stuff. But ultimately, that's what energy work is for, and intuition is for in this moment, not about kind of digging through your past and healing old stuff or imagining what you're going to do in the future. It's just about right now. What do you need right now? What's happening for all of you right now? That's the important part. But I'd say the pivotal point, the one that comes to mind for me, is I had an opportunity. Um, I was in my software job, and my boss said, "Hey, I want to promote you, but I can't give you more money because we just did raises, right? But I want to give you more responsibility. So think about it. Tell me what else you'd like." And so I meditated on it the next morning, and I just got really clearly, because my guidance comes in just like I'm talking to you, right? And said, "Oh, ask for 2 weeks off vacation to go visit your friend in Germany." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, no problem. I've got 2 weeks. That's no brainer. Okay, I'll ask for that." And then my guidance said, "Oh, and ask for the entire month of May off paid." I was like, "I can't ask for that. Like, that'll just be a no." And they're like, "Just ask. Just ask." Okay. And at this point in my life, I was to the point where I was having so much fun with my intuition that I just tried everything that came. I just thought, I'm never going to learn if intuition is real or not if I'm not brave enough to try it, right? But if I try it, then sometimes I'll have hits, sometimes I'll have misses, and then I've got some information, the scientist in me, right? Then I've got information I can deal with, and I can build up my beliefs around that real information instead of speculation. So I asked my boss the next day. She said yes. 2 weeks later, I'm in Germany with my friend. Is the middle. It was really cold. It was February, freezing cold in Germany. Terrible time to travel. And then I remembered, another friend of mine used to live in Poland. So just on a whim, I just sent her an email, and she said, "Hey, yeah, actually, I'm in Poland right now, visiting my family. Come on up." I went to visit her. We're talking, catching up, and she says, "Oh, I've got this. I'm living in East Africa now, in Uganda, and I've got this intuition and healing school." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool. That's really cool." And she said, "What's going on with you?" And I told her the story I just told you. And I said, "So I don't know what's going on, but I've got the entire month of May off." And she starts laughing. She says, "I think I know why, because I need a substitute to come in for the month of May and teach. And I don't know what to teach him because I'm kind of at my limit. I've taught everything I've learned, but I know you've gone further, And so why don't you come to Uganda and teach for a month?" And I was like, "Whoa, okay, that was pretty good intuition." Getting some validation here. So I just said yes. I show up, and in my heart, I had all the experience. I knew how to do this. I had a teaching certificate, so like I had all the credentials, but I was still afraid that people were going to find out that I was really a software engineer, that I was kind of pretending to be this healer and teacher. And by the end of that month, things kind of flipped on their head, and I realized, whoa, I'm think I'm really at my core an energy healer and a teacher, and I'm just pretending to be a software engineer. Like it just sort of that was a pivotal for me. It just flipped around, and that mindset, that change was enough that because I had been brave enough to try it, I was like, I know what it would be like if I was doing this full time because I did it for a month, and I don't want to do anything else anymore. Like that's it. That's what I want to do. And so I kept following, and I kept getting my guidance, following my intuition. And within, let's see, that was May. 6 months later, I had changed locations, changed jobs. Everything had shifted just by following. I didn't have to plan any of it.
I love that. Your intuition guiding you into that space of you stepping into the next place you're meant to get to in life. How did you discern that that was the voice of intuition? It wasn't just a crazy, like, harebrained sort of idea in your head? Like, how did you, like, because you mentioned earlier that it's easy to hear your intuition, but it's much more difficult to actually act on it.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe you can elaborate upon that.
Sure. Yeah. The reason I knew is one, it's actually very much like you said. If I'm tuning in and I'm getting the answers that I expect or that I want to hear, that's probably my thoughts, right? Or ambitions. But if I'm tuning in, I'm getting stuff that sounds like no way, that I don't even know what to do with that, or I'm just blown away. Like that's probably your intuition, because most of us are thinking a lot smaller than we can live. Like the if you think about, like, people always say, I want to create the life of my dreams, and I just think, well, that sounds really limited, because I want to create the life beyond my dreams. I want to live a life bigger and more amazing than I can even imagine right now, because I'm growing, right? The biggest thing I can imagine now is not my full potential, right? And so intuition is what gets you there. It takes you beyond your kind of analytical mind and your ideas. And and the way I'd say, when you are tuning in, the way to know, so one is, if it's surprising, that's a good sign that it's intuition. If you know it and you're just kind of agreeing with yourself, that's called thinking, self-validation. Nothing wrong with that, but that's for a different purpose. And also, if it's coming from love. So last time when we weren't recording, we talked a little bit about this. So we talked about that, if you're tuning in and you feel like you're being guided by a voice that's telling you that you need to clean up your act or get it together or need to be more, or you're not as good as that other person, or your teacher is, like, all that's comparison, and that energy is just coming. It's basically, those are your fears and your pain, things where you're not, where things are kind of bound up energetically. When you tune in with your intuition, that's not there. You might get some insights about it. Like, you might notice, oh, I didn't even realize it, but I'm really insecure around that kind of person. Oh, interesting. That's an intuitive hit. It's not like, oh man, I'm insecure, I need to change it and heal it. It's just like, oh, I see that now. Okay. And then you're on your way to changing it. So this side over here, your intuition is really coming from love, and it'll blow you away. If you're really tuning in and listening, you'll get things that seem kind of ridiculous to you at times. Like, I can't believe, like, that's just way too big. I'll tell you a funny one. Like, I got one when I was in Sedona. I'd moved down to Sedona and got my job back, and I was meditating one morning, and I saw this vision of me on stage in a stadium, like, that held, like 10,000 people, and I was on stage speaking. And at the time, I was terrified of standing in front of my friends and speaking, right? Right? I could, so I was like, and my guides were saying, if you're interested, this would be a fun path for you. This would be something you'd really enjoy and would be really fulfilling. And I was like, that's terrifying. Like, I absolutely do not want that. I don't want to teach. I don't want any of that. But some part of me is really excited by that idea. Like I can, there's a version of me that I didn't even know was possible in this vision. And like, all right, if that's part of my highest good and the highest good for everybody, go ahead, line it up, like point me that way, and just please, as my my question is, please take me there in a way that's gentle, get me gently to that future. And it happened. So years later, I was standing on stage in a stadium, and I remembered that moment. It's like, oh yeah, thanks guys. I made it to here. I had no idea this would be real. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in using the word gentle as well, and I could probably ask a question around that. But I think I would also like to ask the question around what is it feels like you're grabbing things from the ether when you're describing intuition. What is the field that where do these intuitive hits come from, in your opinion?
Yeah. Yes, good question. So I'll answer a little bit. This is actually tapping into the work I'm doing with my wife, Hisami. So Hisami is really fascinating. So for when I'm going to really deep stuff, oftentimes I'll have to sort of borrow from her wisdom as well. So because I kind of grew up in the material world, doing material world things, and then I sort of grew up as an engineer, and my mind sort of opened up into new things and energy things, and I kind of stepped into them, and then I sort of evolved over time from like kind of normal into whatever you'd call what I am now, right? But my wife
Hypernormal.
just
Sorry.
abnormal. I like to stay ahead of the game, and but I'm having fun, right? And but my wife was just always turned on. Like her energy awareness never left her, so she never lost that connection with the source, right? And she calls that spirit mind. So my wife Isami, she says the best way to think about it is that you have two minds. You have your material mind, which is its job is to deal with the material world, and it's awesome at that. And then it deals with finite things, right? Things are good or bad. There's all this questions and answers and judgments, and this kind of a dualistic nature that we have, this material world. She says, but you have a completely other mind. That's your spirit mind, and the main difference is there's only one of these. There's just consciousness. So and you can, your consciousness and my consciousness is just one thing, right? So that's the big difference. And it's very, very hard to understand this. It's easy to say a few words around it, but it's very hard to experientially understand it because our bodies are obviously separate. So, and the mind that we're trained in school to use is all about separation and comparison and judgment about, what's good or bad or better, or, that you need that brain to operate in the material world, right? But this is why we feel separate from each other, because we are physically separate, so that's an obvious paradigm, right? But there's part of us that's not. There's part of us that's never been separate. It's not that we're connected with each other. There's just one of us here. I've heard somebody say that. I don't remember who, but that's such a beautiful saying. There's just one of us here. And so you can call it your higher self. You can call it God or spirit or the universe, or any higher power word you want to use. You are not separate from that awareness. In fact, how could you be, right? It kind of blows your mind, but I'll give you one little example just to kind of make this mind a little happy, right? Because so, like if my wife asked me one time, she said, "So think about the Earth relative to you." Okay, I got it. So everybody, you can do that right now. Everybody kind of think about the Earth, where your body is in the Earth, and then like, okay, now think about the moon. So that feels like it's a little further away. Okay, now think about the sun. Okay, it feels a little further away. And now think about the universe. Now, what did you feel?
Expansion, space.
Expansion? Did it feel further away?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's the trick.
yeah.
In our mind, we think the universe is further away, but we're inside the universe.
Yeah.
It's not further away. There's no distance between us and the universe. We're inside of it. We're not inside the sun, the moon, or the earth, but we are inside the universe, just like we're inside our bodies.
And that's
Consciousness.
what that mind's so good at
Yeah,
doing, it pushing it further and further out away from us. Right.
yeah. And so if you're used to using this sort of body mind, or this material mind, it knows, you because you're inside this thing, right? So it knows that world, but you're also inside the universe. And so you have a mind that's fully connected, knows everything all the time. And when we tap into intuition, to get back to your question, I give you kind of like a long way around to get to it, but when you tap intuition, what you're doing is you're calming this part down enough that you remember that you also have this, or that you also are this. You don't really have a spirit mind, right? You are that. You have a material mind because it comes with the body. And when the body goes, it's gone, and you get a new body. Maybe you get a new one, but this one is just always there. It's always you. But you can't use. It's really hard to put into words because you can't say part of you, or I mean, it's like all the words you want to use don't work. Those are all
Unlimited because they're from that other mind realm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
fun.
I appreciate it because I when I first saw your course on Mind Valley, it was duality, and I was like, it's a spiritual teacher not promoting unity. And I was like, what is going on here? And I started unpacking your work. And I was like, it's the dual awareness between what you've now coined as spirit mind and 3D, almost 3D mind is what I call it. But yeah, there was a question in that space that I had around duality, is elaborating how to balance like envisioning outcomes, because that feels somewhat intuitive mind, but then also embodying higher states of being, because that also kind of feels 3D mind a little bit. Yeah, how do we, in the dual awareness approach, especially when it comes to manifestation and creating ideal outcomes, can you elaborate the balance between, envisioning outcomes, but then also embodying higher states of being?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, really good questions. So even though I described this kind of, I tried to describe in words this state of connecting, and that we're all connected, right? Or we're all one. It's not connected, right? We're all one. Um, uh, Having that, like, if your goal was to be in that, to be experiencing that all the time, and not have this part of you that's thinking and worried about paying the rent and things like this, um, that's that's an unrealistic goal, right? So don't set yourselves up. But this brain wants to divide everything into good or bad. So really soon, we saw this in our students coming through Spirit Mind. Even though we're super careful to never say it, right away everybody's like, okay, I think I understand. My old material mind is bad and the spirit mind is good, and I should get rid of this one. I should do that one. Like, no, but it's just natural, right? Um, so manifesting in higher consciousness. The reason I mentioned that is, if you want to deal with manifesting in the material world, uh, having a mind that understands the material world is great, right? And so a lot of what we do in the duality training is I give you new tools to use this mind and this mind at the same time. But they're tools that, especially in that course, it was specifically targeted at people that are very strong over here, like me. People that have like I love thinking. I don't want to give it up. I can't just meditate alone. I need to also be thinking, planning, doing. That's faded a lot for me in the last few years, but I used to really be in that space, right? So I wanted to manifest things. So a couple of things I'd say. I'm just looking at the energy of your question again. The moving up to higher levels of consciousness or higher awareness, the way that's going to help your manifestation is that you're going to be able to skip some steps, right? So you're going to be able to create the life better than you can imagine, rather than just creating the life that you think you want. Because I hate to break it to you, but in my experience, if you create the life of your dreams, as soon as you get it, you're going to realize, oh man, I kind of spent a lot of time creating this and it's not really what I want. It's like, I don't feel a whole lot different than I did in the last place. I just have like a different haircut or something, like, or different situation. But, I've done this over and over where I decided now I'm going to be this person. I admire, this teacher. So I want to be more like them. And pretty soon I'd be like them and I'd realize, oh, I have that same sense inside that I'm not being myself. And in fact, maybe the thing I admired about that other person so much was that they were being themselves. And so me being like them means I'm not being like them at all, right? Because they're being themselves and I'm not. So it's like if you're tuning in and raising your awareness and getting to higher levels of consciousness, you're going to skip through a lot of that. A lot of your ideas, the years you could spend climbing these different ladders that seem really good, taking these different programs that sound wonderful and achieving all these certificates that you probably don't need, you can sort of skip over all that stuff because you can quickly tune in and notice, I can see how valuable that is, but I also know that I don't need it. Like I can see how wonderful this kind of teaching or practice or yoga or whatever it is would be, but I can also see that I don't need it right now. And so you can suddenly start to discern like between all the wonderful things that are out there and the ones that are actually going to help you. Yeah, help you today, right? And so that's where the higher levels of consciousness really help manifest. It actually, maybe I'd say it the other way around. I'd say it'll keep you from wasting your time manifesting all those things that you don't actually need to get to where you want to go. Right? So it's almost like anti-manifesting, right? but you're not actually trying to create all the things you think you're trying to create. Most of those are just things people have told you or that you felt like you're missing out on. You're a much deeper person than you believe. Like the things you want are even more exciting and interesting and in some ways intangible than you can imagine. Yeah.
I find that really amazing, even in your description, just the unified field and how we're all these sort of fractal elements of it seems, and how we can all download our authentic expressions from that unified whole universal field, and yet it is encouraging us to be the most authentic version of ourselves. It is such a trip. There's been some really interesting signs and synchronicities from nature that you've encountered on your journey. Things like the enchanted lake to meaningful animals. Could you share a few standout moments where these signs led you to some significant realizations of your own?
Sure. Yeah. Tell me the example again. I didn't quite catch it. From
you had certain animals. There was a piece that I read somewhere about a lake.
Oh yeah. It's interesting. Well, I moved when I got out of the corporate America, when I sort of just sort of followed my way out. I ended up moving to Sedona, Arizona, which is just so beautiful. It's like living in a national park. In fact, it probably would be a national park if people hadn't already, built houses there. It's just fantastic, and the energy of nature is so beautiful and strong there. It's like when you can stand up on one of they call it the airport vortex. You can stand there and watch the sunset, and it feels like just like this beautiful, loving, sort of mothering presence. It's sort of pulling a blanket over the whole valley and just tucking you in to bed. And it's just like the whole sky turns pink because the rocks are all red rocks too. So it's just like, it doesn't even seem real. It looks like some kind of weird colorized version of reality, right? And then the energy is so strong. It's just crazy there. So being there helped me tune in more because, in the city, there's a lot of noise. I live in Tokyo right now. But in the city, there's a lot of noise. So that really stimulates us. Being able to put that aside and go out in nature, things will really open up. But the one that comes to me that's I don't know why, but when you asked that particular question, I remember this meditation I was doing early on in Sedona, where I was sitting this is what I do every morning. I'd wake up and I do a particular meditation to kind of tune in to my higher guidance. And I didn't intend to, but I was just so excited to do it every day that I would just do that first. I'd maybe use the bathroom or get a drink of water, but then I was like, okay, I'm going to do this meditation. Years later, I realized the first time I missed it, I realized, oh, I made it over 500 days doing this meditation before I took a break. Not because I ever set out to, like I never would have picked that number. It's a crazy number, but because I was just excited. I was just following my dreams. It was exciting. I was following my heart and my passion. And in this meditation, one day I was tuning in, and I saw this like me that's to me at the time it felt like, oh, this is me in a past life. I'm some kind of like monk or something, and I'm in this cave, and I know I'm getting ready to die, and so I feel myself like releasing out of the body and becoming this bird. And I'm flying and I'm soaring around, and like just this really amazing experience, right? I was like, wow, this is so great, and it was all very experiential, right? My meditations are not abstract, very tangible, and I don't do drugs. I never have, but you would think so if you listen to my stories, right? And I just don't need drugs. I get that naturally, right? And so I'm flying along, and then from this bird's eye view, I noticed like, oh, this looks kind of familiar. Like I had just moved into Sedona, but I was like starting to notice, I think I'm in Sedona. And then I was like zooming in, flying down on something. And I thought, oh, that's the house that I just rented. And just at that moment, this shadow comes over my eyes. And I was sitting looking out the window in my bedroom, and I open my eyes, and this bird is flying directly from the sun directly to me. Right? And this bird is flying right here, and then it like veers off, and then boom, the sunlight hits me right straight in the eyes, full open, and I get this huge burst of information from this other me. Just everything that had happened, and I would just sit. I was just my body's shaking, and I'm laughing. I'm like, I'm definitely gone crazy now, Feels so good, and just all the information coming in, and it was I don't know. I just thought of when you said animals, connect with animals, like somehow that being in nature, being in that environment, brought me that experience. But that's how my energy world and my physical world always overlap. It is the strangest thing. I'm imagining I'm this bird flying, and then suddenly I open my eyes and the bird I was imagining I was is flying toward me. It's just like, okay, it's when you start tuning into that stuff, you're like, obviously something's happening. I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried, and it blows you away. But you have to sort of give yourself room, make a little space to have these far out or deep in experiences, Yeah.
I love that. I'm realizing this far into the conversation that we haven't really taken the moment for the layperson to tune in and understand, because you actually worked for the US Department of Energy at some point. It's like, huh? What sort of energy is going on in the US government? But there are, like, when you're referring to energy, I think there's the layperson conversation around energy, which is, and not to talk down on that, it's just the like you said, mainstream is not cutting edge. The sort of mainstream conversation around energy, which is fuel in society, and then there's some people have a personal conversation around energy, which is energy levels, which is vitality. But then there's a conversation that you're having around energy, which is more based on intuition and spiritual dialogue with oneself, I feel. Can you sort of center us in the conversation around what energy means to you?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, all those things are true, right? It's a very broad word, which is why it's great, right? So, but when I'm talking about energy, I'm not really talking about like wind power or electricity or these things, although that's, probably that's a great use of that word too. But I'm talking about more subtle energy. And the reason I use that word is that it's using the five senses that we're used to sensing material things. So I'm used to like touching and tasting and seeing and hearing and smelling and these sensory things. I'm used to using them to on the material world, but there is more of you that's not localized in time and space than there is that's localized. Your body is the only part of you that's localized in time and space, right? So your senses also work in this broader manner, right? And so there isn't a good word for this because when you're really tuned in, you're not really in the world of language and words anyway. So by the time you put it into words, it's filtered down. So energy for me is just the word for these non-material things that we can sense, whether we're sensing it with our, in a touchy-feely way, we're touching it, smelling it, seeing it, or imagining we're seeing it, or hearing voices, or if it's just a knowingness, which is a knowingness is really sort of the non-localized version of thought. Like we're used to thinking about things, but knowingness is like, oh, I just got this insight. I just know something. And then somebody says, well, walk me through the steps. Why do you know it? Like, well, there weren't really any steps. Like I didn't know it and then I did. Well, that doesn't sound very reasonable.
Yeah.
So let's try it out. Like, let's try out these things that I just somehow knew were true. And if you experiment like this, you start to build up and you'll start to find out that, yes, sometimes I'm engaged in wishful thinking. Okay, that's true. Sometimes I'm actually getting amazing insights that are true beyond what I could reasonably come up with. And the more you practice, the more you learn to differentiate. Like that, it's okay. It's okay that sometimes we're all engaged in wishful thinking. It's okay that sometimes we can fool ourselves. Things are all okay. And it's also okay that sometimes we're not, right? It's that sometimes we're actually tuning in and catching stuff. That's okay too. Yeah.
I find that to be one of my deepest fascinations is just coaching people, which is it feels quite 3D at times, because there's a sense of these are the goals, these are what I want, and there is a whole, you can argue, it's Amaret Touchwood, so maybe there's some intuitive aspect to it, but nonetheless, it can be quite 3D, in people reaching for their desires, but sometimes there is this word that I see surface its head around again and again and again. And people don't always use the word intuition, but there's this knowing. It's like, oh, I just know that that's what I'm meant to do. Or there's a knowing that this is for me. Or, and it's like, tell me more about that. And there's always this deep curiosity for me around this sense of knowing, because we may be alien to the concept of intuition, but somehow we're somewhat okay with just, I just know.
Right.
I hear that still present for the layperson. Touchwood.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say, I have to borrow kind of from my wife's vocabulary for this, is that I'd say that knowingness is really when you're remembering that you can also use the spirit mind that you have, that's aware of everything. There's no distance between you and the information and time and space and other people and so on. So that's when you can realize that, or remember that, that's when you just know things, and you don't need to explain it because for you, it's true. But I would say this is very different from the things that you're dogmatically positioned about, right? So there's a lot of things that we're like, well, this is right and that is wrong, and there's no way you're going to convince me otherwise. That is not knowingness, right? That is dogmatically positioned beliefs. And that's fine, but just don't, doesn't mean they're true. No matter how much I think something's true or false, doesn't mean it's true or false for me. And it certainly doesn't mean it's true or false for anybody else. So it's really different. A lot of people have experienced this kind of knowingness. I'm right. Damn it, I know I'm right. Like a lot of people have experienced this, but we're talking about a different kind of knowingness, a knowingness of like, oh, that's how things are. That's it's not good or bad or right or wrong, or I don't have to preach it or teach it or anything. I just noticed something. Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah.
Purpose and calling. Do you find that some people have that baked into their deep knowing, and yet there's a lot of social noise that sort of gets packed in on top?
Purpose and calling. Definitely, I think that it changes. Certainly for me, it has that it changes over time. So I can feel, because we're on a journey. We're kind of all on the same journey in the big picture, but individually we're making our own road, to the same destinations. And so at one point in my life, I may feel like a real purpose or calling in a particular direction, only to get there and then realize, oh, that was just a step taking me over this other place or here. And my life, to me, it feels kind of windy, the road I'm on, but I enjoy that. It's a nice road. A long straight highway is kind of boring, right? So I kind of like that I'm going here and there. But I would say that if you're feeling stressed about, I don't know my purpose or I don't know my calling, or then just let the whole thing go, because that's not the purpose of it. The purpose is not to, you're going to find out what it is, or like just kind of, that's an impossible game to say, like, there's something you're here to do. It's really important to your soul. It's the most important thing ever. And you don't know what it is. Come on, like, who set that? This is a ridiculous setup, right? This is something that, our mind's made up, right? The universe doesn't really work like that. It's like, you're a tree, but we're not going to tell you that you're a tree, but you have to figure it out. And we're not going to tell you how. And, it's like, that's not how nature works. Nature is more instinctual. Like if you're a dog, what you feel like doing and how to live, and you're going to learn too, but it's not a mental exercise to figure it out. I mean, bad example because dogs can't think like us, but or maybe that's the perfect example for that reason. So if you're feeling stressed about purpose, just back off. It's okay. Like, your purpose can be very big. Like I asked my wife, he saw me one time, and purpose, and what she said was really fascinating. She said, my purpose is easy. It's to make happy memories. I was like, ooh, that's a good one. Like, I wish I had put that first. It's like, ooh, that's a purpose I can engage in any moment. Like right now, I'm talking to you. I can make a happy memory right here. I'm like connected with all these people through your show. I can make a happy memory. We can all make a happy memory. Like, we're all on purpose. We're all, on our path. So that kind of purpose is going to serve you more than, like, I've got to reach, a billion people and get the message about blah, 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 blah. Like, those things are awesome too. Those are very motivating, but they're not your actual purpose. They're just sort of a rationalization or a procedure that you're creating out of it. Yeah.
I love that. It's interesting you mentioned the connecting to the audience piece. Oh, by the way, one of the key pieces I love about what you shared is how process-oriented creating happy memories is rather than destination-oriented it is, and I find there's always plenty of good juju in there. Sometimes I say I love that and I don't articulate why. One of the key things you mentioned was, connecting to the audience now. And it's really, well, I'm going to use the word trippy. I think it's safe to use the word trippy here. When you were creating Duality for Mind Valley in some of your courses, you were like future forecasting your energetic connection to the audience that was going to receive your work off into the future, and connecting to that through the process of you creating it in the present moment. Can you articulate that process, the setup, the mindset, what's going on there?
Yeah. Well, if you're asking how I do it, I couldn't really answer that. But to me, there's no difference between people that are in the room with me in present time and people that are, out there watching the video right now. Like, I can feel all of you right now. I can reach out energetically. Sometimes you'll see me moving my hands around. I'm actually doing a little bit of tuning and energy work when I'm doing that. It's very unconscious for me, but it's not hard to connect with all the people that you'll be connected with in the future. And it sounds a little bit corny, like I've had people were asking recently, a student saying, if I don't go to your live Zoom call, can I still feel the energy? And I thought, well, a couple of years ago, you just said, can I feel the energy on a Zoom call because we're not live in the same room? Now you've like reduced it to like, if I'm not in the Zoom call. but then I point out, but didn't you take an entire class from me where everything was pre-recorded years ahead of time and you totally felt connected and inspired the whole time? And so many people say, man, I was watching that lesson number 17 or whatever, and I could swear you were talking right to me. And I always say, that's because I am talking right to you, because we're not separate in time and space. That's just, the bodies are, but we're a lot more than that. And so it's not even unusual. It's actually normal. It's weird to think that we're separate. That's the weird thing, not to think that we're all one. Yeah.
Wow. Just digesting that for a moment. In that oneness, we have spirit mind, which, as you mentioned, is where we're all connected, we're all one. And the transformation that we're experiencing on a day-to-day seems to be somewhat of a gradual process, a bit linear. What strategies do you have potentially for our listeners to be able to embrace, these teachings of spirit mind and continuous learning, especially when it comes to, the more, you mentioned the word subtle, and I think that's a profound word in this space, and you've espoused gentleness earlier in the episode as well, around, the energetic work and this spiritual exploration.
Yeah, I would say first is it's okay whatever path you want to take. So for each of you, like if you feel drawn to like really get into like a coaching or teaching or something, and you're like, I really want to do that, and I want to reach this many people, and I feel inspired, and I'm motivated, and I'm excited, and it's making me happy, that's fantastic. Or if it could be anything, if you're making clothes and like that really gets you excited to see the smile on people's faces and imagine them, and like that's great. Like don't worry that you've got the wrong inspiration. Like it doesn't work like that. Like if something's making you smile and you're excited about it, that's perfect for you. And if you're in that space where you're still really excited about your material world achievements, probably the best I can help you is to turn you on to my duality energy training with Mind Valley, right? Because that's going to speak your language. That's going to talk to you where you're at right now. You're going to, it's very concrete, much more than I was in this call, actually. It's very detailed. Like, let's break it down. Let's look in detail at all the things. How do they work? How would you use them? Why is it interesting that you have chakras, not from a philosophical, historical perspective, but how do you actually use them to manifest things or to have a better relationship, or use them in your daily life? So that's a very kind of very tangible course. So if that's where you're at, that's going to be the course for you. But if you're in a place that's where you're sort of feeling like you're distancing yourself from that, and you're really just like, I just need to find me. I need to connect with that part of me that seems elusive, that this part, when it's too loud, drowns it out. So if you're in that space, then I would say the spirit mind training that I just created with my wife Isami, that's going to feel really good to you, because it's all about just letting this material mind calm down and letting it move right into that beautiful space of spirit mind. It's not about getting rid of it at all. It's actually just about letting it come back to its original role inside this safe, loving space. And when you can get that, it'll blow you away. Like this, your thoughts will be more clear, not less clear. It's not a turning down or a loss of anything, although it sure feels like at the time, because we're used to this part of us, this linear thinking part of us, being the king or queen of our life. This is what we were taught. If you're good at this, you'll win in the world. And so we've all amped this up to the max. It's just overheating and blowing us up. That's why we're, burning out and miserable, and all kinds of chaos is happening in the world. It's just all one thing. It's because we got a little carried away here. Nothing wrong with this, but like, let's get it back in its natural position and remember who we truly are. And then boom, relief, feeling better. So it kind of just depends on where you're at. That's why I've got multiple programs. There's even another program in the middle there, Unlocking Transcendence, for if you're in a different space. But whatever you're feeling drawn to, go for it. But remember that all the teachers, me included, everybody, even though they're doing their best to tell you how to follow their lead, like I can tell you my journey and what, in retrospect, how I would have done it differently if I was doing it now. But that's not the actual journey that I lived, right? Like, nobody's teaching what they actually did, because they'd be like, well, okay, you got 25 years. Okay, well, wander around for 25 years till you find your way here. Like, nobody wants to buy that class, right? So just keep in mind that, even the best teachers aren't really telling you what they actually did. They're telling you what they wish you did, and they wish they had done what they think maybe you could do better than they did. And don't take it too seriously. Like, take the best parts, but when it starts to feel like, this part's not jiving with me, it's okay. Just leave that part. Take the good part. Take a little bit of the best from everybody. And because ultimately, all your information's within you. It's not in all those other people. You have all your information. The universe isn't outside of you. You're inside the universe. All the information in the universe, like, you're inside of it. Like, you can access all of that. You don't need somebody else to tell you what to do.
And those information pieces, I'll definitely put a link to all the programs you mentioned in the show notes below for those that are keen to check it out. All you have to do is check out the show notes below. Those information pieces are quite palpable, because when we walk into a space or a place, sometimes we can feel whether the vibe of the room. It's like, you know what, this space feels off, or this space, like you were mentioning Sedona before, feels really on, or actually there's something, between me and that person that's off, or there's something between me and this person that really clicks. I guess a bit of a question around, how do we know if we're feeling a charge? Whether we should explore it further, or whether we should in fact recoil from it, and is it okay to recoil if we don't feel positively towards something? Or do you get the line of my question?
Yeah, definitely. It's always okay. Like, it's always okay to make any choice you want. As long as you're not harming others, I would recommend that, or harming yourself. But there's it's okay to steer this way or steer that way, and to change your mind along the way. But I liked what you said is, we've all had that experience of feeling something. Like, you meet somebody and you're like, I don't know why, but I am really, really excited about talking to that person. Like, that person, like, already there's something happening. I can't put it into words. I don't know their name. I don't, but it doesn't matter. Like, that's because there's energy exchange happening between the two of you. And energy, we're kind of like guitars. I like playing with music a little bit. And, like, if one guitar, if you pluck the G string, the other guitar's G string will move too. And so it's the same thing. Like, you're literally in harmonic resonance with that person. And so you're like, that's why you're boom, 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 and you're feeling something big, and they're feeling something big. And so explore those things. But if it comes in the context of romantic relationship, maybe give it a little bit of time, because remember, your body's natural response to somebody is to get excited, right? Is to want to procreate and spread, grow the species and continue. And so that energy can come and go quickly. That can be like, whoa, I'm so excited about this person. But that doesn't mean you're going to be life partners, right? It might mean that, but just let yourself be okay that different things have different cycles, and don't be afraid to step in, but don't step in with the expectation of that what it's going to be already, because you're just probably going to get a little disappointed and maybe act a little foolish. At least in my experience, that's what I did.
Jeffrey, there is so much depth to your work, and like you said, you've created online e-learning platforms for different people at different points of their journey. The intention in your heart of hearts behind that, what's your mission here in life now?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, my mission in the biggest picture is that this kind of goes back to the beginning where we started. Is there's a big change that we're going through on the planet right now, and there's no doubt that the change is going to happen. The question is, are we going to navigate these changing times in a graceful way or in a very painful way? And it's not necessary to have a lot of pain and suffering. It's not necessary. There are graceful, kind, gentle roads to our future. And so I am voting for those roads for me and for everybody else. And so all the programs that I make are all about that. It's like, we know we're going to an amazing place, but let's just get there in a beautiful way. Like we don't have to push it, make it go faster. We don't have to fight with each other. There's no scarcity. That's what we're moving out of, is this whole scarcity model into like the abundance model. So like, let's let it all unfold in a way that we can enjoy. Yeah. And
how important is our inner state in this revolutionary external world that is shifting, like the revolution that's occurring in the external world? We can all sort of see things disintegrating, things being burst, high level, like, we can all feel the climate conversation being had. We can all feel artificial intelligence coming through. We can all feel such an interesting state of affairs around the world going on, that some people sometimes, and, I reflect upon this as well, even myself. And I sort of know, and again, it's interesting, we've used the word knowing quite a bit in this conversation. I sort of know that it's not a cop-out to just turn inwards and do my work internally. But I think sometimes it can be perceived that way, that, how convenient that I just have to do the work on myself and that'll make the world a better place. And there seems to be that sort of, again, I don't want to say self-limitation, but yeah, do you get the essence of my question?
Yeah. So
it's a deep one.
Two questions there, but one is, your point about, is it okay to just turn within and do inner work, or am I sort of neglecting maybe something I could be doing externally that would help more? There isn't. Well, let me put it this way. So for humanity to move from kind of the old consciousness that we've been kind of in a sense thriving in for so long, into a new consciousness, and we must make this move because the energy on the planet is changing. So like, we can't stay here even if we want to. So we have to move to this new consciousness. There's one requirement on you for everybody to get over here, is that you have to do it. Like, you have to change your consciousness. If you don't do it, everybody can't do it, right? Because there'd be everybody but you, right? So you're actually required. That's your one requirement, is to let yourself get there. So it's definitely not a cop-out. But also, the beautiful thing about higher awareness is when you let yourself become more authentic and move out of this sort of noisy, fighting, competition, pain, struggle space, that we all love and it hurts, as you move out of that, you begin, it's like your guitar is playing new frequencies, right? Now you're playing a harp, right? So you've got some extra strings, this is beautiful sound coming out of you, and because we're all the same, you're starting to strum that in other people too. So if your awareness changes, the people around you, even if they're not trying to, even if they don't want to, are changing too. And so you are influencing the world around you. Even if you're just going to your same job as before, you haven't changed anything in your outer world. If you change inside, you'll notice that joy that comes in you starts to spread to the people around you. And people will tell you, people will say, I don't know why, but you look you look so much happier. Like every time I see you, I feel a little bit more hopeful because I know you were miserable last year, and this year you seem like you're pretty good. So like makes me hopeful that I can do the same thing. Or you know what I mean? Like you don't have to actually do anything outside. If you want to and you're inspired to, great, do that too. But it's enough to take care of you because that is taking care of everybody.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jeffrey. I think that'll be really, really powerful for some people to hear. My curiosity is stoked. The energy on the planet is changing. Can you tell us a little bit more about that before I let
you go? Yeah. The full story is, the Spirit Mind training is where we really get into that.
Yeah,
and talk about it
I'm
more
so
deeply.
keen to dive into this. Yeah,
especially because so my wife, you saw me, she got this download about it. It's probably been 15 years ago now, where she's like, boom, oh, everybody needs to know this. Okay. So finally, we're getting it out to the world in English. My wife doesn't speak English. I don't speak Japanese either, so figure that out.
Lucky you both speak energy.
We've been married 13 years. So.
Wow.
But yeah, what's changing? So all the things we talked about are kind of part of it. We're moving out of just really being dominated by this material mind awareness, this material world goals and desires and competition and right and wrong, and just trying to focus all of our energy on that. So that's fading away. We're moving into, and you can see it in yourselves personally, like everybody, when you feel that tug, like there's something new I want to do. Maybe I know what it is, or maybe I don't, but there's something new that doesn't quite fit with this old thing. That's because that's this new energy that's kind of pulling you out of this common consciousness. We don't have to call it old, just kind of common, right? So it's kind of pulling you out of that. But eventually it's going to pull us all over to where we're experiencing life in both dimensions at the same time, the dimension of being fully one and the dimension of having separate bodies and separate minds. So those are two different dimensions, and you can experience them simultaneously. So it doesn't mean that we're going to blow this world up and we're all going to ascend to a different world, although I've heard that story many times. But I would contextualize a little bit differently, like you're just going to put them back together instead of pretending that they're apart. So, yeah.
Jeffrey.
So I'm sure I'm giving you more questions than answers, but
it is such a pleasure. I can't even begin to tell you. For those that are tuning in, I know you can, because we're connected, like Jeffrey said, in real time and in all the times to you. It just feels so palpable, so clear, so loving, just the work that is just so present for us to do on ourselves, to connect back, to remember, to heal, to love. Yeah, and I'm conscious that today's conversation has been extremely illuminating, and I could easily just thank you for your time here today, but it'd be somewhat rude not considering not even just the body of work you've put into yourself, but also your wife has put into herself. And, today's conversation stands on the shoulders of all of that. So I just really wanted to take a moment to just honor and acknowledge you and thank you as well for being here today. And thank you so much for sharing yourself so deeply.
Yeah, and thank you too for all your amazing insights and questions and, opening all these doors.
It's my absolute pleasure. Guys, once again, just before I let you go, Jeffrey has some incredible courses. I've done duality myself. It's a really amazing concept to go through, to really understand how to be. And like Jeffrey said, he brings, I would say, his engineer's mind to the work of spirituality, and brings you into the world of energy. So duality is a great place to start. We'll put a link to that in the show notes below. I'm personally really curious about spirit mind and all the potential and possibility that it holds for us. So again, links to that will be in the show notes below. As always, stay inspired, keep evolving.